So with me today is Mr. Corey Hauser. Corey graduated from Wilkes University 2 years ago, right? In May of 2018. So he's one of our success stories in the pre-law program, which we can talk about more in depth. But can you tell us, Corey, a little bit about where you've been the last 2 years and how things are going for you?
Yeah. So after graduation, I went straight through to law school here at Washington and Lee University in Virginia. It's been an interesting and fun 2 years. I've really enjoyed it. And, just, going to class every day, having some wonderful internships, a lot of great interactions with professors and stuff. So it's been a lot of fun.
Great. So the pre-law program at Wilkes is an advising program. So any major at Wilkes can be in the pre-law program. You can be chemistry, art, English, political science. We have a lot of political science and criminology majors who go into law school. So it's an advising program where I kind of help students get prepared for the LSAT. So the LSAT is the test you take to get into law school. And then I kind of work with students to with students through the process of applying to law school, which law schools to apply to, personal statements, and many strategies that are involved with picking the right school. So Corey, can you talk a little bit about how Wilkes and the pre-law program kind of helped you in this decision-making process where you ultimately ended up at Washington and Lee, which is a great law school?
Yeah. So, I guess to go off your point a little bit, I wasn't political science, or I wasn't a humanities major at all. I was finance and ended up picking up a minor in economics and stuff. So I was in the business school, and I remember, I think it was my freshman year, I was really enjoying the business school, and I, had thought about law and stuff and just wanted to kind of find out a little bit more about it. So I reached out to you, Dr. Kreider, and you had recommended me to take the intro political science class so then I could take some more advanced classes with you that were more law focused. And so I did that. And I think my first class was criminal law, and I took that my sophomore year with you. Correct. And really loved it. I had been enjoying the business school a lot, but I think there was just a different feel in that class, at least for me. I just couldn't be more interested in the readings and going to class and participating and stuff. And it was an experience that I don't know that I had really had in any class before, whether it be in college or high school. And so after that, we met a little bit to kind of talk about, LSATs and doing some prep for that. So I decided that pretty much from that point that I was going to go ahead and do something in the law, and I wanted to go to law school. And my goal was to go straight through from undergrad. I felt that I was kind of the type of personality that if I went and got a job, that I would get way too into that job, and then, would probably be hard for me to go back. And so I took a logic and reasoning class at Wilkes to try to help prepare me for the LSAT. And I also took there was an additional class component to that was LSAT specific, which was great. I started preparing for the LSAT, and I realized that it was definitely going to be a challenge for me, that, I wasn't getting as great a practice scores as I would have liked. And so I decided to go ahead and take an online class that was specific to the LSAT, that was taught through a testing company over the summer, going into my senior year. So once that happened, I took the LSAT in, I guess that would have been September of my senior year. Got a score that I was fairly happy with, but I felt that I could do a little bit better. And so I decided to make one more wave of studying and take it again in December, and it paid off. I got a higher score. After, kind of solidifying that, we met a lot to talk about schools that were in that band of where, I had some schools that I felt were more reach schools that would be a little bit more difficult to get into, but that might be interested. We had, planned out some safety schools where we felt that, my score, my GPA and stuff would get me in for sure. And then we kind of had some target schools. And WNL was definitely one of those target schools. I went and visited down here in Lexington during the fall of my senior year and just fell in love with the school, fell in love with the campus. It felt very much like Wilkes. It was smaller. The professors were wonderful. And so we spent a lot of time crafting a personal statement for all of the schools, but, in particular for Washington and Lee. I think you read every single thing that I wrote and prepared as part of the application and gave feedback on it. And, I was lucky enough to have Dr. Hughes over in the business school, who went to Washington and Lee School of Law, who, looked at everything again for me and gave me a lot of great feedback too. And so I think that, without the pre-law program, without your guidance, I would definitely be lost. I wouldn't understand quite as much that goes into studying for the LSAT, that goes into the application process. It's pretty intense. It takes a lot of time, and there's a lot of moving parts. And without you, I don't think I would have been able to get into the school that I did.
So that's very interesting. And if I remember correctly, if we're talking about the portfolio that you had when you submitted your applications, one of the things that I know that you had, and I was hoping you could talk a little bit about it, but you had an internship, right, with the Luzerne County Court of Common Pleas Judge, Judge Hughes, I believe. So could you talk a little bit about how that experience and the degree to which that experience helped you in law school?
Yes. So I did that internship the summer before I started law school. And so I got it right about the time I was finishing up my applications, which was a nice little way to throw something at the very end to say, oh, by the way, this is how interested I am. And so I started that internship in May. I think it was the Monday after graduation. I graduated on Saturday and started that on Monday. So I didn't take too much time off, but it was a fantastic experience. I can't stress enough how much it gave me some tools going into law school, especially terminology. You go into a civil procedure class and you hear things like in personam jurisdiction and subject matter jurisdiction and service of process and things like that, and your head just spins. And so I had a little bit of a learning curve, a little bit up, especially in those areas, having worked with Judge Hughes all summer and his law clerk, and who both went to WNL Law. So not only was I learning some stuff about the law, but I was learning a lot about WNL and what professors to go to and stuff. So it was a great experience. It paid dividends for me, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone.
Great. Yeah. And so you mentioned in your comments earlier that so you took criminal law with me and you took the constitutional law class, or at least one of the con law classes with me. I mean, could you talk a little bit about the degree to which those courses helped you in law school?
Yeah, they helped me immensely. So I took the criminal law class, like you mentioned, and then I took your constitutional law class, which was the government structured class. So it wasn't the civil rights and civil liberties component, which was good because most of my con law class here in law school was structure of government, separation of powers, and things like that. And so I took crim law my first semester, 1L year, and all I remember is walking in and everyone asking, what is this thing called the Model Penal Code? And I was like, I know exactly what this is because I had Dr. Kreider's class. And so the way you structured your class was very much how my criminal law class went. It was more, I guess, criminal law theory than learning specific elements of crimes and stuff, which I think is pretty consistent of how criminal law is taught in law schools around the country. I definitely felt I had a leg up. I did very well in the class. I actually used my notes from your class quite a bit when I was outlining. And a lot of the cases we read in class, I had case briefs on that we ended up reading in my criminal law class here in law school. So it was extremely useful. As far as con law went, I your class was structured almost identical to the way my con law class was structured in law school. And obviously it was framed in a little bit more of, legal tests, and we did more about things like standard of review and stuff like that. But the overarching concepts of, separation of power and commerce clause and dormant commerce clause were things that we covered almost the entire time in class. And so I remember, opening up, and so many of the cases looked familiar to me. So many of the cases I had case briefs on from your class. And so it was immensely helpful. I felt I had a leg up the entire time because of having your con law class.
Great. So we have students in the pre-law program at Wilkes, and they're at various stages of the process. And so you're a veteran now of the process. At least you're about to enter your third year of law school, which I want to talk about in a minute. But do you have any specific suggestions or pieces of advice for students who are maybe a year, they have a year to go in order to go to law school, and they're kind of working on their LSAT and personal statement? What pieces of advice would you have now? Would you provide now that you have gone through that process?
Yeah, I think there's a couple tips I would have. I mean, the first is the LSAT. Unfortunately or fortunately, there's a lot of emphasis placed on it. And so it's really important to do as well as you can on that, study really hard. I would pretty much advocate for everyone to take it at least twice. There's, since about 2000 and I think 6 or 7, most law schools have moved to no longer weighing your 2 scores. They've moved to taking your better score. And so there's really no harm in doing better. In fact, I think any incremental, change in your score that it goes higher signals to the school that you're willing to put in the work to do better when you don't do maybe as well as you would have liked. And so I think, taking it as at least twice and putting in a lot of effort into that is probably the best thing you could do. I would say the second best thing I know, from speaking to a lot of the admissions counselors here at WNL, is the personal the personal statement as well as the letters of recommendation. And so one thing is generic personal statements don't go too well. The faculty reads them on the selection committee. The admissions representative reads them, and if it reads like something that was pretty much taken from somewhere online, it doesn't go over well. I think the consensus there is they would rather maybe a not as well structured or not as grammatically correct personal statement that really reflects who the person is. That's what they're really using it for. As far as the letter of recommendations go, forging relationships with faculty at school is probably maybe the second most important, maybe even the first most important thing that you could do to get better looks at your applications and stuff like that. The faculty at law school write an awful lot of recommendations for jobs for students as well as for clerkship hiring and things like that. And so they know what a good letter of recommendation looks like, and they know when someone has made the connection that enables that professor to really speak to who they are. And so I know you had written me a letter of recommendation, and I mean, we met so often. I had you for 2 classes. I was involved in the pre-law society, of which you were the advisor. And so you had plenty of things, I'm sure, to talk about, of experiences with me. And those read a lot better than, a professor who maybe was your academic advisor, but really you only saw when you had to schedule classes and stuff like that. So I think forging those relationships would be a really important component to the application process.
Great. So a couple of weeks ago, you contacted me with some excellent news. And so I want you to share that excellent news with the public here about, where are you going to be in your third year of law school, and what will you be doing?
Yes. So I received some really exciting news that I was voted in by the outgoing editorial board of the Washington and Lee Law Review to serve as the Volume 78 editor-in-chief, which is really exciting. I also found out that the note that I had been writing my entire 2L year has been selected for publication, and it'll probably go to print in the December 2020 edition of the Law Journal. So it was really exciting. It was definitely a little unexpected, and it's been a lot of work already, but I've been really enjoying it. I'm really lucky and grateful to everyone at Wilkes and WNL who made some impact on me and was able to make this possible.
That's great. And I told you this over email. I just want to kind of throw this out in this medium as well. But when I received your email, of course, I was extremely exciting, but I can't say that I was shocked, given you were such a great student and, you wrote very, very well with your papers and your exams. So it didn't really come as a surprise to me just because of the quality of student that you were at Wilkes, and I know that you are at Washington and Lee.
Thank you.
So this is great. Thank you, Corey, for talking about the pre-law program, and best of luck in your third year at Washington and Lee.
Thanks so much. It was great catching up.